guys, I'm Tom. Welcome to my LS Powered Fj45 build. So in this episode I'm going to cover what it takes to get a 45 series cab bolted onto an 80 chassis. So talk about cab mounts, I'll show you all that, how we got it mounted, front crossmember flip on the front of the chassis, and also what I did with steering, how I sorted that out. So first off, I thought I'd start off by telling you about myself. I'm 17 years old, I'm in year 12 at the minute. Decided to document this build for a video. Couple reasons for that. The main reasons is obviously when I bought this I had no idea what I was doing. I was a 12-year-old. So one of the main ways, apart from sort of learning off Dad and a few other guys that have helped me out, was sort of through Facebook groups and videos online, watching YouTube. When I was doing a swivel hub rebuild or something like that, I'd always get home from school the day before we were doing it and jump on YouTube, watch a few videos of it, and I'd do it with Dad in the shed. So that was sort of one of the main ways I learnt. So I sort of thought may as well do a bit of my own videos, try and give back a bit to the community. Also through the Facebook pages, there's a few guys there that are building some pretty cool stuff. So the other reason I sort of decided to do this is so in future I can always look back on my build, sort of laugh at myself a bit and see what I've learnt and where I've come from. I still obviously don't have much idea what I'm doing, so I'm all about trying to learn, sort of pick up as many skills as I can. Also, I've never done much video work before, so I'd like to sort of try and broaden my horizons a bit. I've got a little bit of experience building 40s. Bought this one on my 12th birthday after going to Langi for the day. Sort of did that up in the shed with Dad, just sort of working one night a week on it. Sort of evolved into a bit more of an obsession since then. Done a few builds with Dad, including this, which is his LX Fj45. We also built a Fj45, which he since sold. So I've got a bit of experience sort of in the restoration side of building Land Cruisers, but very little a bit more of the extreme four-wheel drive sort of stuff. So pretty keen to get into that. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, sort of doing a bit more engineering and fabrication sort of stuff. The idea for this build, be something a bit more full on. I'm going to run 80 series chassis under it. Reason for that, sort of, it's coil sprung, but it's still solid axle. And they've got a little bit more track width on a 40 series. So you got a bit more stability off-road. It also pushes your tyres off, so it keeps your body a bit further away from the embankments and stuff like that. So they're really sort of good base. They drive awesome, super comfortable. Sort of a little bit shorter wheelbase than a 40, which should help off-road. And they're just sort of a real solid chassis to start with, easy to fabricate with, because they're not mild steel rather than sort of spring steel like a 40 series is. So you can just weld onto them a bit easier and stuff like that. Plus they're disc brake all around. My chassis in particular is the later model brakes on it, so it's got slightly bigger brakes on the back. It's a DX chassis, so it's got locking hubs, all that set up already. They drive really nice. I love driving, I daily drive my 80 series, so when you do an 80 build, one of the considerations is you got to get the right gear chassis. Before sort of 1997 is ideal if you can. After that you got to run with sort of ADRs, so stuff like airbags, side intrusion bars, sort of stuff like that, ABS. Yeah, you sort of want to try and stay towards the earlier years, but if you stay sort of towards the later of the sort of the middle years, you can get the disc brakes, the bigger disc brakes, which are a bit of an advantage. So engine wise, I'm going to run an LS1. My particular engine's out of a 2002 WH Statesman. So mine's actually one of the more powerful variants of the LS1 that we got in Australia. Originally I wanted to run LS2 or L98. Sort of that was my ideal choice. But obviously being a 17-year-old, budget wasn't sort of too friendly to me. Also with COVID, prices are sort of seem to go through the roof a bit. And one of the guys who works near my dad's work, one of the local mechanics, had a Statesman sitting there and it had been crashed, so I got that pretty decent deal and sold the wreck for pretty good money, so sort of ended up pretty cheap, worked out well, so I couldn't really say no. The gearbox I'm going to run, my chassis didn't come with a gearbox, so I've bought a 105 series box, pretty much the same as an 80 series, bolts up all the same. I've just got a slightly different size input shaft, so it's slightly bigger, and a different spigot bearing and stuff like that. Just slightly stronger box. So I've got the same in my 80 series because that didn't have a box when I bought it. So yeah, so that's where I'm going to go with the gearbox. Then the cab's a 1977 HJ45. We bought it off a friend's farm. It was a bit of a shame in some ways. It was a one-owner car, but it had spent its whole life on the farm. And yeah, the whole front was just completely stuffed. It was a style side, but the style side, the floor was completely gone. The sides were all bent. The headboard was slightly skewed to the side, so ended up just pulling the cab off that. The tub on it's really good. The doors are really good. Windscreen panel's mint. So the roof's on it's a bit stoved in, and the rear wall's actually skewed to the side a bit. May have possibly been on its side at some stage or leant against the tree or something like that. We've got the porta power, which is this big jack, so we'll get that in there and try and straighten it out. Nothing we haven't sort of fixed before, so it should work out right. Plus it was cheap. We had it sitting there, and sort of the tub I had originally for it was a bit of an earlier model one, didn't have retractable seat belts or anything like that, which you need for engineering. That's not too big of a deal. I could have done that, but I also had the rib in the firewall. It was a straight rib type, not the curved rib, so it's harder to run an 80 series boost. You got to cut it all out and modify it all. The steering column was the wrong one. It's a really early style 40 series column, so ended up going with the whole cab we had sitting there. Just pulled that off and then sold the chassis for about the same we paid for the car, so that worked out well. Again, saving me money. I'm trying to keep this build down as much as I can, so but yeah, so it'll be LS1 5-speed manual out of an 100 series 80 chassis 45 series cab. Then gonna run tube guards on it. Gonna try and build them myself. Just bought a tube bender, so keen to give that a crack. I've already built a set of sliders for my 80 series, so feeling like I can tackle that. We'll see how we go. So first job on the ute, we got the chassis, had it all sitting there. So first job, cut off all the cab mounts. So cut them off, then just ground them back with a flat wheel on the grinder. Then we sent it off to the sandblasters. Came up looking really good, was really happy with it. It's a very annoying job. Just, yeah, got to take your time and just slowly grind it back, not cut into your chassis at all. So got that done, sent off to the sandblasters, came back. Then I put it into an edge primer just to sort of protect it a bit while I build it. Yeah, it's going to be a while before it's ready to paint. I'll modifying the chassis and cab mounts and crossmember flips and tray mounts, and I'm probably going to bob the chassis at the back a bit too, try and keep my departure angle up. So not too sure how much yet, but probably about 200 to 300 mil. just picked up the 80 series chassis from Sandblasters. Pretty happy with it. So it come up really well. You can barely see. That's where one of the old cab mounts was there. It's not cut into the chassis or anywhere, so I'm really happy at how it's come up. There's where another one was, so pretty happy with all that. It's all back in bare metal at the minute. So about to put a bit of extra primer on it. Stop it rusting while we weld all cab mounts and flip the front cross member and do all that sort of stuff. But pretty happy with it. It's coming along nice.
So she's come up pretty good. Pretty stoked with this chassis. It's in really good nick, so should be pretty good. A stolen edge primer. No gloss yet. That'll happen after all the cab mounts are done. But this is just to protect it while it's sitting around waiting for cab mounts and the rest of it to be all fabricated. So should be pretty good. She's coming along. Here's just a cab, we're just about to set it on. Just gotta go pick up some 80 series cab rubbers that we're gonna run. Then we'll start fabbing them up. So I got the Powered 45 out.
is pretty good for what I want. It's pretty knocked around up the front here. The guards is just absolutely mashed. Bonnet, it's pretty. How you doing? But front panel's pretty straight. The doors are pretty good. There's no rust in them. This tub's awesome. Can open her up. Look at the floors. It's just pretty good. That's the only bit of rust in the whole tub. Like all the centre bits just mint. It's all just covered in cobwebs. She's really decent. This rear wall, it's a bit of a shame. It's got a few dents, and so up here there's a bit of a dent. It's pretty nasty. The roof's all sort of caved in. This door somehow survived. The tub's on this side's awesome, but the whole rear wall's a bit bent, which is a shame because it's pretty good nick. There's not too much rust, a bit of rust there, no holes or anything. This windscreen panel's awesome as well, so I'll probably just use that. So just finished pressure washing her down. She's come up pretty good, she'll be right for what I want. Yeah, it's all in good nick, pretty happy with it. Looking down there, but that's nothing. Inside's still dirty, but it's alright. Clean her up. Pretty mint dash, looks pretty cool. Old tape deck and all that. Pretty typical 40, it's got a bit of ammo in the floor still. Yeah, should be right. Do the job. Once that was all done, all in edge primer, we got into mounting the cab. The cab mount kit I used was one of the McKinnon's Cruisers kits. So contacted Billy, he hooked us up with them. So they worked awesome, they just made it easy. Probably make them yourself, but there's, for the price that they charge for them, sort of, even for me, it wasn't really worth the effort of mucking around. So just bought those, made it pretty easy. Basically sat the cab on roughly where it was, looked at, I knew roughly where the mounts had to go on the chassis, so I basically lined the cab up. Then you got to make sure your front diff is in the right proportion to your cab, so measured that off a stock 40, so I just measured from the front of a door jamb to the front axle, the center line of the axle, and then replicated that on the 80 chassis. I'm running 80 series rubbers, cab rubbers, so bolted them up to the body and sat it in place, got it all in the right spot, worked out where the cab mounts went, got a scribed them on in the right location, pulled the cab back off, put the mounts back on, and then ran a straight edge across the front ones, and made sure that they were sitting flat, parallel, square on the chassis, all that sort of stuff. Welded them in, same with the back mounts. And then yeah, that was basically the cab mounted. Huge shout out to Uncle Steve. He's an absolute gun on the hot glue gun, so he helped me out with that. I was sort of wanted to do it myself originally, but it's one of those things that's pretty crucial. He's insane with the welder, and he offered, so sort of just makes the build a bit nicer, a bit safer, one less thing to worry about for the engineer. It's just, his welds are beautiful, so that was sort of a bit of a no-brainer for me. So stoked he did that for me. Really appreciate that.
Like 20 mil. Yeah. Roll it up. Fuel
Brisbane Heat, Daniel Sanders smashing 65 runs off just 25 balls to guide the Thunder to victory. They were in and the draw for the round of 16 in the European Champions League has been held today.
Adjustment in that. So once we got the cab mounted, we were then on to get the front Crossmember flip. That was the next job I tackled. Again, it's a crap job, like absolute turd. So yeah, just same sort of thing, ground it back, flapped it all back, got it all neat. Basically, what we did, we got the porta power, which is basically just like a sort of high-end long jack. So just a big hydraulic ram, and just sat it between the chassis rails and just slightly put a bit of pressure on them just so they moved a couple mil, and that just made it slide out nicely rather than being stuck in there. That worked a real treat. You got to be careful when you're doing that because they've got sort of 20 ton of pushing power, so just very minimal, but just made it slide out a bit nicer. So once it was out, we basically ground it all back and then used weld through primer, primed it all on the inside, sat it back in. Again, Uncle Steve came and he just welded it in for me. So that was a huge hand again. Super happy with that. It came out really well. So I've cut the front cross member out now. So it's all cleaned up, ready to go. Just gonna put some weld through primer on it just to protect it. It's all cleaned up under there too. All the old cross members all ground back and cleaned up. So that should be alright. So just about to spray some high build primer on it, and then we should be all good to go. So after the crossmember was all in, I then set up the steering. So basically I ended up using a shortened 40 series original column, which is splined, so it's the same as a FJ45 series column. And then basically from that we ran a 105 series steering uni joint, and then went to a HJ61 intermediate shaft, and then that bolted straight up to the 80 series power steering. So yeah, that worked out really well, just sort of bolted up. I'm gonna run the LS power steering pump. That should be more than enough to sort of run everything I need. Thanks for watching, guys. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask. Put them down in the comment section or shoot me a message on Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, really appreciate the support. Cheers, guys.